Well, that's a 20 minutes of my life I won't get back. Lynn grumbled to herself, her cleats making small scrapes on the ground as she's dragging them on the concrete. I didn't say whatever will be able to catch them. That dunce must have really bounced before he left school, Ronnie Anne replied, a look of indifference on her face. The little smirk was working its way up her lips. But there's still tomorrow. Ronnie, the Jacques growled. I don't care much about tomorrow. I want to find him now. The longer he's hiding, the more time he has to pull another stunt on Lincoln. I know that, but it's not like we can't keep checking around the school for hours, the Latina replied, shifting her bag a little. Besides, some of us actually have to get home before their mom starts buzzing their phones like crazy. Like, we already missed the bus, and I gotta walk but I don't know, 20 minutes to my place? Yeah. The 13-year-old deadpanned as her gaze focused on the bare street ahead. The two tomboys walked in silence, momentarily stepped into the intersection, waiting for the traffic light to change. Lynn stole a glance at the younger girl who was looking idly around. The air of awkwardness began to form around the Jacques as she fought the little talk they had yesterday. It came up before, but the thought of it pushed back the opportunity to seek out Chandler and make him pay for his little tricks. But that look on Ronnie Anne's face, as well as insulting her feelings for Lincoln, always kept knocking on the door as a reminder of potential tension between the two girls. It was quite funny enough, as the teen came to realize they had more in common than she would have guessed. Ronaldo attempting to avoid breaking down in front of everyone was something Lynn had done for the past few days after Lincoln's disappearance. At least the Hispanic girl had the benefit of letting it all out, as Lynn assumed. As soon as she left the field, Lynn bottled up her depression, thinking she deserved to shed a tear of sorrow due to what she did. Pop finally brought out of her, and Lynn felt slightly better than having at the damn break. And even then today, the Jacques could see the fire behind Ronaldo's eyes as she was focused on finding that little weasel who gave her and Lincoln a difficult time. Lynn could have gone as far as to guess it also had something to do with nearly souring hers and Lincoln's relationship. She's got an easier way than I do. At least, she doesn't have to feel like being an asshole for completely screwing over her bro, Lynn monologued to herself. One thing that jumped in her train of thought as she continued thinking about the interactions between Ronnie Anne and Lincoln. During the time she had avoided him, Lynn would occasionally watch the two from afar, noticing if they seemed a bit closer than usual. At one point, the Loud could have sworn that she once caught them leaning against another of the swings inside the gym. A small smile formed on Lynn's face. So you and Lincoln, Ronnie Anne whipped her head around with a sudden notion. Yeah, what about it? Have you two actually made it to your first base yet? Lynn bit her lip to prevent a few chuckles from escaping. The younger tomboy raised a brow. That is some sort of baseball analogy or something? Lynn mentally slapped herself. Of course Ronnie Anne wouldn't get it. She's only 11. Kinda, but it's something you'll know when you get older. Ronaldo narrowed her eyes. How much older? Lynn gave a smirk. Old enough for when you start noticing more things about Lincoln. The 11-year-old deadpanned. Stuff like what? Lynn paused, trying to realize that this talk may not go over smoothly. You may want to ask your mom or dad or even your bro about it. This just left Ronaldo with more questions. For one, why would Lynn ask suddenly about that? Second, what was she trying to hide? The only thing her and Lincoln did was give each other a little kiss, and now and then, a few times during the day in Ronaldo's case. However, the mention of her brother unfortunately dug up the suppressed memory of having heard Bobby and Lori making some weird sounds in his room. The 11-year-old turned it out after a few moments that once their moans got onto her nerves, but if they were doing what their parents had implied they were going to do right after dropping Ronnie Anne and Lincoln off on their date. The Hispanic girl put a hand over her mouth as she gave dry heave. Ugh, what's with the sudden questions? She looked at Lynn with the light eyes, a light glare forming. You don't like me being around Lincoln or something? Lynn widened her eyes as she noticed Ronnie Anne's use of Lincoln's nickname. She gave a little snort as she temporarily ignored it. Nope. In fact, I have to thank you. The jock shoved her down, her hands in her pockets. The light had changed and the two were free to cross. You were there for Lincoln ever since he ran away, and you were even there to cheer him up when he was feeling down. You were also the one who made him feel like he was a part of the family. Lynn's gaze became downcast, while all we did was slowly drive him away and act like complete morons. I practically wrecked our relationship with those dumb superstitions. He half smiled, but at least now, me and Link are cool again. And you must have gotten real close if you were calling him my bro Linky. Ronnie Anne faintly blushed at this. She stared at her shoes at the solid concrete again. We are close, but I'm gonna miss him being around once he moves back over to your place. She gave Lynn a side glance. But we wouldn't be this way right we are now if I had pushed the buttons too much. Lynn frowned. Let me guess, it's about the video when you destroyed those boys? Yeah. Ronnie Anne fumbled her hands in her pockets. Link is a very nice guy, but he's just a completely different person when he's that mad, but it made him look like he was having a fit in 4th grade when I beat up those stupid snobbish girls, and I didn't even remember what happened during that fight. I do. When I was in 6th grade at the time, Lynn huffed a little. You grabbed one hand by the head, smashed her face in the floor, then shocked her so hard that she fell over. A laughter escaped her. It was awesome! You pounced on him like a lion and didn't stop until I thought they were dead. A teacher had to pull you out before you really were. Okay, but Lincoln... Ronnie Anne jolted a bit as a small chill ran up her spine. He whopped 5 guys like it was nothing. Sure, he used a big branch to do it, but how does he need someone like him, actually who's usually weak and would hardly fight anyone, do something like this? It is most awkward and weird seeing him seem so nice these days. She then glanced around to make sure that no one else was within earshot. It makes me a bit afraid of him, but don't tell him that. She pointed at Lynn in a threatening manner. Lynn couldn't help but laugh. Well, Ronnie, take it from somebody who nearly got their butt kicked handed it to them. Lincoln is like a bomb with a very long fuse. He may occasionally hit us, but he doesn't usually mean it. And sometimes when one of us are fighting, it takes a lot to get under his skin. Her face then formed up into a neutral stance. But that is just one of those times where the bomb usually finally bursts. And I'm also guessing Chandler must have been bothering him for a while, and seeing Lana get hurt like it again. But honestly, I would have done the same thing. Lynn knitted her brows. No one hurts my younger siblings and gets away with it, and I'm sticking to that. So, you see what I mean when I couldn't help but imagine what he'd do if I went that too far? Well, what was the worst thing you did to him? Renolda then pierced her lips and thought. She didn't like going over the negative moments she had with Lincoln prior to everything as it stood now, but it did serve as a reminder that she'd never go that far again. I'd say that I decked him in the eye when he kissed me. One of her digits fiddled with her ponytail. I meant to hit his forehead, but just swung without aiming. Outside of that, it was just pranks like stuffing food in his pants, the usual pie to the face gag. Lynn stopped in her step, making Ronnie Anne do the same in confusion. Okay, 1, stuffing food in his pants is gross, and I mean, and a waste. I mean, who doesn't want to eat food, good sloppy Joe? I also do remember you pantsed him a few times like I usually do. A wide grin formed on the jock's face and blanketed on the idea. I didn't know you wanted to get to third base that quick. There you go again with the stupid baseball wordplay. I don't even get it. Renolda yelled in frustration, making Lynn double over as she held her sides. Anyway, Lynn started, her fists of laughter dying down. I doubt Lincoln would ever hurt you. He probably said that he'd always be there for you to protect you, and you may have said the same thing. Another blush appeared on Renolda's face. This one was more intense than the last. Are you sure you're some kind of mind reader? The jock raised a brow. No. The same grin returned. What? I did hit the goal post on that. The younger tomboy stayed silent for a moment. She probably would have smacked that stupid face off of Lynn if she wasn't right. He also said he loved me. Then you got nothing to worry about. You're still kicking to that promise, right? Ronnie Anne nodded, a fire lightning in her eyes. All the reason I wanted to stick that Meverhead-faced Chandler in a locker with the garbage in it. That same fire can be extinguished with hints of depression form. I still can't believe I fell for that stupid trick. The younger girl continued walking as she hit the ground. Lynn followed for a second later, guilt swelling in Lynn's chest again. And as she thinned a bit, her hands becoming tightened a little as the words bubbled up in her throat. What she could possibly say about that? Lynn wasn't right to call out Ronnie Anne, but at the same time, she put her on the spot and probably made her feel more than a considerable jerk, with everyone staring at them. With the words practically starting to spill through her lips, the Jacques let out a heavy sigh. I'm sorry. The 11-year-old raised a brow. For what? For saying all that stuff to you. I mean, I had to call you out on your shit, but I bet you feel like a total idiot, especially with everyone watching you cry yourself. Well, you aren't wrong. I guess I don't know Lincoln as much as I thought. A pregnant pause took over the silence. Is it okay to wonder if I'm actually good enough for him? I don't believe the whole troll comments and other girls at school would have been saying that to my face, but... Renolda stopped suddenly, as she felt a shock of pain detonate her upper arm. She whipped her head around towards Lynn, who was giving an amused stare. What was that for? The Latina glared, rubbing the sore spot. That's for thinking you weren't good enough for my bro. I mean, he would have stuck around all this time if he didn't think you were worth it. Pranks aside, I think you make an extra awesome girl for Link. Ronaldo's eyes widened a bit. I wasn't so much a fan of the girl he used to crush on, to be honest. She seemed too, preppy or whatever. I mean, I know Lori and Lenny dress up sometimes, but I don't see the point in doing it if you're just going to get dirty soon enough. I'm betting $10 he spent the whole time cleaning that blouse more than anything. Lyndon smirked a bit. At least you know how to get rough and stand up for yourself. I think Lincoln secretly likes that in a girl. Ronnie Anne's glare softened a little, muddled with mix of confusion and praise. I don't get it, Lynn. 1 minute you're bashing me on how I overtreated Lincoln in the past, and then you're apologizing for it? And now you're saying I'm actually good enough for him? Did you hit your head at some point at school? Jacques suppressed a chortle. I told you before, I don't want to make the same mistake I made with Lincoln. By now, I think you know that too. Also, my sisters have always figured a way that you guys were hanging out, saying that you were a keeper. She placed a hand on Ronaldo's shoulder. We really mean that, and I'm pretty sure Lincoln knows it too. Ronnie Anne looked at Lynn in the eyes to see if she was being serious or not. She didn't find any sort of trickery within him, and a short recall of their date yesterday, as well as the other times, the tomboy and Lincoln were simply enjoying each other's company at the forefront of her mind. A moderate blush trickled her cheeks as she focused back on looking straight ahead. A warm fuzzy feeling in her heart. Yeah, I guess he does. Connor whistled himself as he walked home from school, his hands stuffed in his pockets as he didn't have a care in the world. For once he actually had a decent day at school. He made out with Christina and made some sort of partnership with Lincoln, or at least dispelling any hostility between them. His teachers didn't give him any homework. On top of that, the boy took out a piece of paper he had in his pocket. Part of it was torn, but if it had been previously in a notebook. However, the importance of his paper became quite clear. Like, once you see that the chocolates were a good idea, it's not that he really wanted to. But Carol was one of those girls that would screech your heads off whenever they get excited. But of course, it had Christina's name and phone number on it. Smiling to himself, Connor then put it back in his pocket, drifting towards his oldest sister. And Connor was sure as heck wasn't going to come home just to suffer temporary hearing loss. As the Pringy boy continued towards his place, he spotted a group of older boys sitting on their bikes on the other side of the street. They had duffel bags on them and probably carrying some sort of sports gear or whatever. It didn't matter to an 11-year-old though, as he just gave a passing glance and continued shuffling down the sidewalk. His eyes became closed and let himself enjoy the sudden breeze that hit his face. Due to this, Connor didn't pick up the stares the teens were giving him. Craig was looking between his phone and Connor as he was passing him. Looks like that's one of them. But where's the ostrich butt? Murray asked. They kind of look like bros. Wouldn't surprise me if they were, Pat added. Doesn't matter. We got 200 walking right away, Paul piped up. I still rather split between 83 each for us instead of 66. Chris spoke. Since he was typically on a few words, half the group jolted upon hearing him. Well, how about we do this? We grab them, go find the other one, then beat them until we think about 8 and take pictures, Paul suggested. The other 5 boys then struggled in agreement, kicking up their bikes and pedaling towards their target. Connor continued walking, now humming in the Hall of the Mountain King, the classic song that grew up on him when Cassie used to play it so many times. He closed his eyes and tightened a little once. He picked up the sound of the bike and the wheel in motion, followed him a few towards more coming down. When he opened his eyes to glance back, Connor stopped humming at the abrupt high pitch when those boys passed and stopped right in front of him. Can I help you? The small, short blonde asked in confusion. The air of confidence emitted from Pat as he donned a cocky grin. Yeah, we need some advice. Where's your brother at? Connor then looked at the other kid and grew through arm. Brother? He spoke with a hard laughter. I wish I had a bro. All I got is 2 older sisters. Are they hot? Bob asked. He earned a quick glare back to his troubles. Paul then gave an annoyed glance at Bob and his hand stinging slightly. What's wrong with you? The teen then reached back into his pocket, producing his phone. You sure this isn't your bro? If you aren't the one for white hair, I say you guys are related. He leaned forward onto his bike so Connor can get a better look. The Princey boy couldn't know what they were talking about, but at the mention of the white hair caused raising some alarms. Connor's eyes widened as he stared at the picture, which of course showed the chance of meeting he had with Lincoln just hours ago. What the? How did you guys? Connor stopped, his surprised demeanor shifting to anger. Chandler, he spoke through his gritted teeth. He sent you those photos, did he? Who's Chandler? Craig asked. Guess that kid who's endorsing us, Chris replied. Connor folded his arms. Let me guess. He's paying you guys to beat up Lincoln? Murray squinted his eyes. Are you psychic or something? He's not psychic, idiot. He obviously knows them. Besides, Paul grabbed Connor by his front collar, surprising the young boy. He hoisted him up onto his eye level. You're on the list here too, so something on the loose end, he chuckled darkly. Beads of sweat began to form on Connor's head. Chandler isn't messing around this time. This is the only thing keeping me going after Lincoln, but me? He screamed in awkwardly. The 11-year-old supposed Chandler got fed up with the previous scheme tanked and decided to hire bullies now. It isn't like Connor to hold Lincoln anything. He might have figured it out for himself, but Chandler must have decided he wanted the whole thing to be kept silent, by any means necessary. So, any last words, Pipsqueak? Pat snorted, brandishing his breath. Connor tried to say, but staring into Paul's eyes, he soon realized they were pretty vulnerable given how close they were. For a brief moment, a scowl formed on his face. Don't blink. Swiftly, Connor slammed his fist into one of the team's sockets. Paul squealed in pain instinctively, releasing the younger boy to his injured vision. Connor then landed on the ground with a huff, but quickly got back to his feet and started bolting in the opposite direction. Once Paul uncovered his face, his left eye was red with a small red mark just below it. Get that runt! No one had been told twice as they literally put in the pedal after the fast metal after the Pringy boy. Connor ran as fast as his legs could carry him, occasionally knocking down trash cans or making sudden turns to try and lose the persuaders. Just about all the teens managed to dodge the obstacles, although Bob lagged behind them after wiping out a pile of garbage. As they continued into the next few blocks, Greg and Murray decided to see if they will nail Connor with a home run. Just in those hitting thing anywhere would be enough to slow them down. They could grin and gain around ground easily. The other two joined, with the others preferring to keep their bikes steady. However, their main reason was not a good idea to ride a bike while instead trying to hit baseball at the same time. Being forced to make sharp turns in an uneven nature on the ground made their aim just as good as about firing a shotgun from 100 yards. A few baseballs sailed away off to the sides, cracking a car window, smashing through a house after Pat swung too hard. Bob dented a few more cars on either side doors or bumper, and Murray accidentally caused a few mailboxes some dents, while topping one entirely to the side. Also, a few fly balls may or may not have hurt someone wandering around town. "I just replaced his hip," the elderly woman shouted as the boys whistled, holding her damaged side towards their angle. Paul gave a sharp groan. "How about you guys try aiming? You're better at this than hitting at the barn than the boy," Chris chided him. "Well, smart guy, why don't you try?" Murray retorted. "Fine, might as well show you amateurs how it's done." This quiet teen muttered as he reached to the back in his bag. Connor panted as he kept running. His heart was in his chest as his lungs kept fighting to take oxygen. His legs ached by the time his feet pondered on the sidewalk, propelled him forward. Every few seconds he would look back to see if he lost the boys, only to become disheartened each time. Grabbing onto the lamppost, Connor swung very hard before taking off again, the teens rounding the corner. A few seconds later, with more balls at the ready. "Man, how much money did Chandler pay these creeps?" Connor said out loud, sucking in more air to his fiery chest. "I don't even have time to call Carol!" The Pringy boy spotted another child walking in the same direction he was running. Unfortunately, also too small to set of familiar white hair, meaning he accidentally found the bullies of her target. The constant level of peace followed Lincoln as he made his way back to the Santiago residence. His mind focused on the prospect with his real family again. The Lao could have managed it back earlier, but decided to take the long way and enjoy the warm spring air. For once, Lincoln didn't feel any ounce of weight on his chest. The biggest obstacle towards him was his return removed, and after that chat with Lynn, he was on cloud nine with the affirmation that he was to do whatever it took to stay within its grace, after going on a manhunt with Chandler. She confirmed whatever she or Ronnie Anne had found them, though. Lincoln shrugged to himself. Ah, well, she could always call him in person. Lincoln breathed up deep, letting out a content sigh. Feels so good to finally not having so many things to be worked up over. He smoothly ran his hand through his hair. I'm almost just as surprised as I inherited this hair from Pop, not from the stress. Then again, I probably have wrinkles too. At least that's what Lisa says. The boy raised a brow, almost thinking of his second littlest sister. I wonder what she's up to. I haven't heard from her in weeks. The sound of rapid footsteps caught Lincoln's attention, and before he knew it, a familiar face flashed by him. "Run!" Connor shouted at the gap as between them increased. "Run? Run from what?" Lincoln asked out loud, turning back to behind him. Seeing the teens with bicycles several meters away, the boy assumed they must be what Connor's running away from. Lincoln was about to duck to his side to avoid them, but he noticed that a few of them were looking directly with malicious intent. The fact that almost none of them have baseballs bats and they were all ready-made, the 11-year-old made him more nervous. Lincoln then started backing up slowly, turning his body around once he started to pick up his pace. "Hey, there's the other one," one of them said. It was all Lincoln needed to hear before turning off into a full sprint. "Connor, wake up!" he shouted. After hearing the other boy shrieking from having to deal with his sister's antics and compete with them on a daily basis, Lincoln was able to keep ahead of the teens and soon catch up to Connor, despite the weight of his backpack being a minor hindrance. "What did you do?" Lincoln asked once again as they caught up to the fleeing boy. I didn't do anything. They just came out of nowhere and wanted to pummel me." The Pringy boy ducked as another baseball ball passed through his head. "I find that hard to believe that if they wanted to hit you with the bat of all things." Lincoln turned around for a second, seeing another ball flying at him. He skipped a bit as the steps as if flew under his feet. The lad reached to his pocket, fishing out his phone. "I'm calling for help." "Who are you gonna call?" Connor quickly lifted his bag a bit, feeling another baseball impact sack before hitting harmlessly to the ground. I don't know. Someone?" Lincoln yelled. The boy scrolled through his contacts, trying to figure out who would be able to reach him in time. He doubted most of his older sisters were nearby, and his parents were out of the question due to them working. Also, he didn't want any of his friends hens to know who is getting scraped into this. Seeing as all this would have just get creamed, being geeks, and it's down outside sometimes. However, Lincoln quickly thought about Lynn. She probably didn't reach the house yet if she spent the time prowling the school grounds. Plus, she secretly hoped that she was strong enough to handle people like these bullies. Scrolling to her number, Lincoln then tapped the call button, hastily put the phone to his ear. 10 seconds of ringing felt like hours until the phone buzzing on the line. Finally, he got an answer back. "What's up, Link?" Lynn asked in casual tone. "Lynn, me and this other guy are being chased by crazy teens with baseball stuff." Lincoln spoke quickly, giving his pained breaths as he spoke. He then took another note of their surroundings. "We're in the..." Lincoln suddenly screamed as a pain shot through his head. A baseball managed to nail his hand, making him drop the phone. The screen's device cracked upon impact. Absolute dread filled Lincoln as he paused to look over the phone, only to take off once moments later. The cellular device was broken to pieces and was ran over by the teens, ending the call and Lynn's frantic voice. "Lincoln? Lincoln, are you there?" the Jacques said, staring at the phone as if her brother's face would appear. The disconnect tone emitting from the phone as their hearts sank. "Dang it!" she then shouted to the sky. "What was that about?" Ronnie Anne asked, growing concerned herself. "Lincoln just called me and said that he's being chased by some bullies, and now I think his phone is dead," Lynn replied, fuming as she paced around. "This is just perfect. My brother is about to get slammed, and I have no flipping clue on where he's at. He could be lying on the ground with a broken arm or whatever. Wait a second." Her whipping her head towards Ronnie Anne. "Is he heading to your house, right?" The Latina nodded. "You should be." Ronaldo furrowed her brows in thought. "Did you see where he was?" "Did you hear what I just said a second ago?" Lynn deadpanned as she subconsciously gripped her phone. "Well, we are standing around here. Come on!" The 11-year-old took down the street, Lynn speeding after her. Each minute that passed and both girls worried for the white-haired Loud. Ronnie Anne feared for his safety, hoping these bullies were mentioned on the ground around her age group. So even so, she could jump them into fray if needed be. On the other hand, Lynn was practically more stressed about the idea of Lincoln being beaten up by people roughly her age. If there were kids within Lincoln's grade, she wouldn't be as worried. Lincoln might as well find another tree branch or garbage can to use. But it wasn't like it today. Lynn was well aware that the fights between the teens could get ugly at first, with broken limbs added to the mix along with major concussions. After all, she got detention a few times and even a suspension once for getting into a few scraps, with her usually coming on top, and so despite of prowess as an athlete, Lynn was just another meathead jock with some of the teachers. Adding to the sense of dread, that was what Lincoln said, that those boys were carrying baseball equipment. The brunette shuddered at the thought of those teens actually using bats on her brother. A few tears streamed down to her eyes, just imagining Lincoln crumpled up on the ground in agony, covered in bruises on his arms and legs. No, that's not gonna happen, Lynn told herself, a growl building up in her throat. She kept her mouth closed so Ronnie Anne wouldn't hear her, as well as rubbing away any salty tears. "If there's even one hair out of place on Lincoln, I'm going to tear someone's arm off and beat them with it if I have to. I'm not failing him again." Up ahead, the two girls noticed a little spark frizzle on the ground. Out of curiosity, they slowed their pace and came across the object. It was the mobile device that looked as if he had been smashed by a car. "Man, talked about someone having bad luck," Ronnie Anne quipped. Lynn didn't answer, knitting her brows at the broken piece. It oddly looked familiar. She then kneeled down and picked up the larger pieces, taking a note a bit of the design. The brunette couldn't help but release some rage upon recognizing the crumpled material. "This is Lincoln's phone! No wonder he suddenly hanged up." Turning a bit, she noticed half the circular imprints that were small tire tracks, and it looks like someone hit him with a baseball, maybe on a bike. Ronnie Anne raised a brow. "How did you exactly know that?" Lynn pouted her lips, looking at the piece of the ground. "I had accidentally beamed Lincoln with a baseball a few times, if that helped to treat him." The younger tomboy gave a sideways glance. "A few times?" Okay, several." Lynn then showed imprints to Ronaldo. and the tire marks are about the same size as my dirt bike. Either way, we're close. Okay, but I doubt Lincoln would have ran all the way to my house with a bunch of crazy guys after him. My parents wouldn't be home, and Bobby isn't much of a fighter. Well, he could have went somewhere big enough to lose them. Lynn then tapped her foot. Ronaldo looked down the street, spotting the sign that led to a popular location a few blocks away. Let's head to the big park, big enough for him, and find a new place to lie low. Let's hope he did. The girls then took off in a jog, as their stamina was a little low. I'm surprised Lincoln could actually keep up with someone on a bike. I know he can't run forever without getting a Charlie horse. Lincoln hissed and rubbed his left quad. Aching slowly became faint, irritating throb. Tell me why we just couldn't head to the dump, Connor whispered, peeking at the leaves of the bush that they were hiding in. I told you, I had a bad experience there last time it happened, and I'm not going to get caught up in that again, Lincoln retorted. Connor glared aloud. But we could have lost him, though. Lincoln raised a hand defensively. Look, it's better that we didn't head there. He glanced at the ground. Unless you want to get attacked by junkyard dogs. Steam escaped from Connor's nose as he let out an aggravated sigh. Fine, but what's the plan now? Once my legs stop aching, we'll just sneak out of there. This place is too big for them to be anywhere. I guess. The blonde then sat on the ground. By the way, you did say what you did to make those guys mad, Lincoln added, shaking his leg in an attempt to get rid of the weird feeling it had. Connor debated on whether or not it would be a good time to tell Lincoln the full truth, while he could just keep quiet about it. The chances of what may happen for Lincoln found out later that didn't paint any pretty picture. It was Chandler. I guess this is his last scheme didn't go as well as he would have liked. Waves of anger flashed through Lincoln, but before he could shout out loud, the boy swiftly reminded himself that he was to keep quiet. What the? Seriously? The white-haired boy spoke harshly. What is wrong with that guy? It's not my fault he was dumb enough to attack my sister. He then clenched his hands tightly, repositioning himself. His legs were crossed. I'm so giving him something to remember at school tomorrow, and I won't even care if I get in trouble for it. He then raised his eyebrow at Connor as the last sentence had finally registered in his head. Wait a minute. Lincoln gave the Pringy a suspicious look. How did you know it was him making those fake pictures? Connor then began to sweat a little, rubbing the back of his head in an attempt to mask his nervousness. I may have accidentally helped him with those fake photos you saw online that day. Lincoln's eyes widened as much as possible, his body flinching a little as if he had been smacked. Those eyes and started squinting back into a glare, his lips starting to show, his teeth rubbing together, his face glowing a bit red. Lincoln snatched Connor by the collar, pulling him close. You better have a good reason why I shouldn't have leave you here. The loud spoke loudly. As intimidated as Connor was by the pissed off loud, he knew that Lincoln wouldn't hit him, at least for now. He would have hit him hard enough to knock out of the bush any moment, but Lincoln was giving him a chance to explain himself. Because they'll come after you anyways. I don't know how much money Chandler is throwing at them, but if it's enough to cause us several blocks, what do you think is going to stop them? Just putting you on the doctor's office after they deal with me? The redness on Lincoln's deadpan face. I have at least 5 sisters willing to back me up. Okay, but can you reach them before they get you? Lincoln opened his mouth as a retort, but closed it. As he started weighing on his options, his phone was destroyed, but he managed to contact Lynn before being cut off, so he was somewhat positive that she was looking for him. However, he didn't even know how far away she was, nor she would know where he is. The Sporty Loud could be elsewhere around town right now, and his actual home was several blocks away, with him already have suffered enough leg pains. The Loud doubt over it could make it that far. Well, though not, Connor added, removing Lincoln's hand when he felt the grip slacken. By the way, I didn't even know if Chandler took pictures of me and Christina until after he was done with them. Lincoln held his glare, unsure of what he should believe the boy or not. After a few tense moments, as much as I hate being near you right now, you're right, Lincoln finally admitted. But do you have a phone? Maybe I can even call your sister. Connor nodded. I do, but I don't have much juice on it. He fished out his phone, and the boy flinched upon hearing the sound of bicycle tires passing through the bush. Along with the sounds of disgruntled teen, leaned over. Lincoln saw Connor's phone had nearly 7% of battery life. Okay, look, we'll sneak out of there and find a place to charge it, and call both our siblings. When this is over, I'm gonna decide whether or not I should let Lynn kick your butt. Instead of the intense malice Lincoln had earlier, his tone was only cared for plain annoyance. Connor just shrugged off the threat. Whatever you say, boss. He added sarcastically, including a mock salute. Peeking through the sleeves again, they only saw that the coast was clear. Thankfully, the boys came out of their hiding spot, keeping low of the bushes behind to avoid standing out. Making a quick check of their surroundings, neither of them could see of the teens. I think we should go back the way we came. They might think we're going to be on the other side, Connor suggested. That might work, or they have an exit covered, Lincoln replied, shifting at uneasy as the feeling he had in his gut. Connor gave Lincoln a side glance. Have any other ideas? Besides the operation of sneaking out of the park, charge your phone and call for help, and sort of think of a shorter name for it? The blonde then gave a half-idle stare. That's not a name. It's just telling what we're going to do. Lincoln's cheeks became faint red as he tried to remain indignant. I'm not good with operation names, okay? Connor then rolled his eyes before heading towards the park exit. Lincoln was close behind him. The two boys stuck together like glue at the foliage, hoping the thick leaves would make a good camouflage. However, there was still a little issue with the fact that their hair made it easy to stand out against the evergreen. So Lincoln expressed the idea of covering their hair with dirt or mud, but Connor found that was a waste of time. Plus, he wasn't going to spend an hour to shower or wash it off later. If they spotted one of the bullies, they'd immediately duck behind a tree, bush, or bench and wait for them to pass. Taking things to make it slow as if they haven't been at the park for hours, running would have been the best option. But the boys didn't want to risk until they were close to safety. Upon spotting the exit, both boys felt the fear boil in their guts as they noticed they had little to no cover the next 50 yards. Well, go for broke? Lincoln asked. If you get another Charlie horse, then I'm not dragging you again. Connor replied with the earnest. You're lucky you were able to get here in the first place. Lincoln furrowed his brows. Don't forget, we're still having that talk later. He took another quick note of their surroundings. After seeing they were alone, run! Both boys then made out of cover, making a beeline towards the brick-covered entrance. Surprisingly, none of the other teens took notice of their impending escape, still being over 70 yards of looking elsewhere. This was so easy, Lincoln boasted as he glanced back. However, the 11-year-old could see the bullies, and the sense of dread began to form as the lad began to wonder where the others were. A bit too easy, he added, slowing his pace a bit. Connor shot him a glare. Don't start jinxing now. We're about to... The pringy boy never finished his sentence, as a bat suddenly swung out from around the corner, nailed him in the abdomen. The air forced out of his lungs as Connor crumpled to the ground, holding his bruised midsection. Lincoln came to a halt on his left. His eyes widened as he watched the blonde forcing air back into his system. You didn't think we were that dumb, did you, Pipsqueak? Craig boasted as he came right around the corner. His bat still held out. Bob approached from the left side, getting off his bike. The freckled-faced teen cracked his knuckles as he cast a grin that made Lincoln shiver a bit. The lad began to back up, raising his hands in a defensive posture. Can we talk this out? He pleaded. The boy flinched upon feeling a hand grasp his shoulder from behind. We aren't getting interested in the talking, runt, Pat replied, unless you could top on what this other boy is paying us. By now, the rest of the group arriving from them, forming a wide circle around the fifth graders. Connor was thrown in a bit of fervor into the center, grunting in pain before managing to sit himself up. I mean, I could pay you guys, but I don't have a lot of money. Well, sucks to be you then. Pat brandished on his own bat, promptly poking Lincoln hard enough just to make the lad fall onto his butt. See, I told you they should have tried coming out at some point, Chris boasted. I still think you wanted to have all the fun to yourself, Murray mumbled, digging into his bag. I've been wanting another gate for hours. Dude, it was only 8 minutes, Greg pointed out. Well, obviously, I had to come clean with the plans, And I was the only one who actually managed to hit them. Chris positioned the bat on his shoulder. The rest of you should have ended up getting the police on our asses. Yes, yes, we can't aim, Paul added, kicking in some of the dirt of his weapon. Can we wrap this up? I don't have all day.